G'day guys, how are we doing? Well, this is something a little bit different to what I normally do. We normally, of course, stick to the talking boxing and the roundup and the watch-alongs, all that sort of stuff. But this is probably a little bit of a continuation on the talking boxing episode this week. And the reason I'm doing is it's just to probably go over the TV situation just a little bit. I've been inundated today, or the last few days actually, by people out there who are just outraged by the pay-per-views here in Australia. And you would have seen the latest Sam Goodman world title eliminator is $70. $70, that's a lot of money. And the overwhelming consensus seems to be that I'm not paying it. I'm just not going to pay it. It's not worth it. I'm paying $30 for Usyk Fury. I'm getting the Liam Paro fight for free if I'm a subscriber to DAZN, and so on and so on. So first, let me just explain how the TV situation works, and I'll give my view on everything else. The reason, first of all, that the fights are so much cheaper coming in from overseas than in Australia is because we're just the cherry on top here in Australia. So what happens is these big fights, take Fury and Usyk for an example, overseas that would have been a lot more money than here. I'm pretty sure it might have been pushing $70 or $80 or whatever it is overseas. So that's where the promoters make their money from. So they put it out there to their main audience, to the ones they're after. That's where they get their juicy numbers from. Here in Australia, we're just, I won't say we're an afterthought, but we're not really a massive market here. So they would see us just as the icing on top, or the cherry on top, however you want to say. And it's the $30 thing because they don't really need our numbers, but we are just a little additional money at the end of proceedings. So that's why it's $30, because they don't need to charge us $50, $60, $70, $80. And I think obviously $30 is actually very, very cheap. The problem here in Australia is that, let's take No Limit, because, well, it is No Limit because they are the pay-per-view holders in Australia. They have to put on a show. So their event might cost, it depends on what shows they are, of course. Let's take this Sam Goodman one for example. Actually, we'll say a Tim Tszyu fight for starters. Now, we'll go from the bigger sort of version of it to the smaller version. So the bigger version of it, it's a Tim Tszyu fight here in Australia, not overseas. Here in Australia, with all the costings involved and Tim's purse and his opponent's purse and sanctioning fees and everything else that goes with it. I'll just get out of the sunlight there, sorry about that. So what happens is that the purses might be $4 to $5 million. Then you've got the undercard, which might be another $500,000, and then you've got all the arenas. Although having said that, most of the time I would think that the state government would probably donate the arena, but anyway, it varies from state to state. And then obviously all the costs of running the event, the production. Now the way it normally works with those events with a pay-per-view is that its main event, they will, in a normal situation, pocket half of the revenue stream, and that pays for their production and staff and their cut of the action. So that's probably the first thing we have to consider. So if you really think about it, the No Limit guys in a Tim Tszyu situation might be up to, let's say, $5 to $6 million to put a show on. So obviously they've got to recoup the money, hence the reason why they charge us $60, $70, let's say $70 to pay for those events. And I think we all understand the way that works and the reason why we have to put our hand in our pockets. And as I said, main event, they take their little cut and everyone walks away nice and happy. The state governments, wherever the fight is, would also contribute a fair bit of money as well. Let's just say, pick a number, they might donate $1 million or 1.5, whatever it is, $2 million, who knows, it varies state to state. And that obviously contributes to the show as well. So that's how they make their money for that. On the smaller shows with No Limit on Fox, for example, and I have been involved with this myself, 4 or 5 years ago when I was with Dean Lonigan with D&L Events, they will give you a nice juicy budget to put on a show. So No Limit will be getting a nice paycheck, or whatever you want to call it, a donation, investment, whatever it might be, and they will have pretty much nearly the whole show paid for just by what they get. So everything they make after that is profit. So it's a good situation to be in. Of course, the likes of Ace Boxing or the promoters involved with Premier Boxing Series, they don't have that luxury. They don't get any funding. They have to pay for the show, as well as an amped up production as well. So they're actually in it up pretty high, as far as the investment goes. So that's probably sort of describing it a little bit more, hopefully in detail, to the way sort of a normal pay-per-view and one of the Wednesday night shows are sort of worked out. So in this situation here with the lesser pay-per-view, so for instance this Sam Goodman fight or event, of course they've got Barry Michael there for a sec, Barry Hall and Liam Wilson used to did, which will sort of be a pretty good fight. What the problem with that is that show's probably still going to cost them, who knows, it might be, well I'm just sort of putting in, look, it might cost between $500 and $1 million to put on that entire show. It's a fair bit of money. So they probably have no choice in effect than to actually charge $70. Well, they probably have a choice. I think they're actually on the steep end a little bit with the $70. But if you do your sums, again, they've got to give main event half the money. So let's just say they have, if it is $70 and they get, I'm probably grasping at numbers here. Let's say they get 10,000 purchases, and that's probably asking a lot, I would think. 10,000. What's that? 700,000. Is that right? Have I missed a zero? What's that? $70 times 10,000. So about 700 grand. So half of that's got to go to main event. So it doesn't leave them with a lot of money. Then they'll obviously get some sponsorship and whatever else. Maybe I'm probably overstating the amount that it actually costs to put a fight on. Maybe it's not that much, but still, it's a fair bit of money. So what you can see where I'm getting at with it, even if it was 350, they might make another, 150 through the doors. They probably have got corporate packages and all that sort of stuff. So let's say they've got a $500,000 budget to work with. So you see how the money gets sort of tied up very, very quick. I'm sure Sam Goodman and his opponent and the cost involved with that might be a $100,000 fight. Then the undercard might be another 100, 150, then the cost of the event and blah, blah, blah. And then they've got to make a profit on top of that. So you can see how quickly it gets chewed up. So that's the reason why they probably have to charge the $70. The issue, of course, we all have is it actually worth it? And are they going to get those 10,000 people that are going to buy the event? Because I was just sort of saying 10,000 almost as a best case scenario. That's almost what they would need to actually pay for the show and make a half decent profit out of it. So the issue that they probably have is at what point, if the fans start talking with their wallets or voting with their wallets, and all of a sudden they're not putting their hand in and paying $70, which the majority aren't, at what point does a tipping point come where No Limit and Main Event by association can't afford to do these events because people aren't paying for the fight? So it's a bit of a catch-22 thing, or the chicken before the egg, however you want to say it. No Limit need to charge $70 per pay-per-view, or else they can't put on the shows. And the fight fans are saying, we'll buy the pay-per-views, but it's got to be probably at least half the cost. So it's a bit of a to and fro situation between No Limit and the boxing fans here in Australia. Now I've got a feeling the ones who will win will be the fans, because the fans, they've got no obligations, they've got no bankroll they have to fill, they've got nothing to lose really. So they will just simply say, we're not going to pay it, I'll illegally stream it, or I'll wait for the replay, or whatever it might be. I'll go to the pub. Now they really ream the pubs, by the way, with these types of events. That's if they put them on at all, which is why you probably struggle to find a lot of these type of fights actually on in the venues here in Australia. The big fights from overseas you probably will get, but not so much the Aussie events, because if we're paying $70, you'll probably be guaranteed the venues are paying probably $3,000-4,000 to put these fights on. I used to have a sports bar back in the day, probably about 15, 16 years ago, and they absolutely ripped the hell out of us, they did. So shudder to think what it's like these days. But anyway, that's another story. So what happens is the boxing fans are going to say, no matter how much we probably want to watch these events, we're not going to pay the $70. If it's half the price, which seems to be again the common theme, yes, we would buy it and support the event, but not at the cost that it is at the moment. And the thing that probably makes it even harder for No Limit is that you've got the likes of Ace Boxing and now Team Alice and whoever else is going to come on the scene as well with the Premier Boxing Series, which is absolutely free and good quality events. Yes, I know they probably haven't got the razzmatazz of the No Limit shows, and not that the No Limit on Foxes are anything flash, but they don't have probably all the bells and whistles, but what they do have are very, very evenly matched good fights. So not only are they contending with the fans who are saying we're not going to pay the money, now they're contending with the opposition who are putting on free fights for them and putting on just as good as shows. So it's a really hard situation for all involved. And then of course you've got DAZN, who, if you pay your yearly subscription, now that's actually getting a little bit unaffordable as well, I get that, but at least they have a lot of content, a lot of world title fights from all over the world, and more importantly, we had the Liam Paro fight, which was free of charge. So it's a really hard situation for everyone at the moment. So just when you're sort of making your comments online and probably more importantly making a decision about whether you're going to actually buy the fight, just sort of keep that in mind. I don't, even though I've been one of the more critical people of the No Limit model and what they've done with the resources and funding that they've had, even though the next couple of events actually look pretty good. As I said, I've been a real critic of theirs, but I do understand that and being a promoter myself in the past, why they have to charge the $70, but I also 100% understand why the fans are saying, well, we're not going to pay that amount of money. So this is probably the question I have is what does this do to Australian boxing as far as the TV situation goes? Because I don't think Australian boxing's ever been in a better position as far as our talent, the big fights we're constantly getting to see. Sorry, I'll get out of the sun again there. Seem to keep going around. So it's never been in a better situation, but in reality, if you look at it, the TV situation has never probably been worse. Yes, it's accessible, it's available, but it's going to cost you. So, and not just, I suppose one thing I didn't actually sort of figure in there as well is that sometimes it's not a matter of wanting or being willing to pay the $70. In this day and age, it's the ability to be able to afford to pay the $70. And that's probably one factor that we're not really considering. So on one hand, you've got these events that are costing major amounts of money to put on. Fighters have got their hand out for more money than ever, and they're fully deserving of that money, don't get me wrong. But the problem is, especially here in Australia, we just don't have the amount of fans, whether it be in the venue or watching live on TV, to make these events viable. So while I think Australian boxing, as I said, has never been healthier, I've got some concerns that going forward, what's going to happen with the TV situation, because if people can't afford or are unwilling to pay the amount of money that it costs to put these events on, where do we go? It's a really sticky situation. And again, I'll say, I don't necessarily blame No Limit for putting the $70 price tag on, because they would be doing their numbers, the profit and losses and all the scenarios, and they would be saying, look, we don't really want, because that's the other thing I was going to say, I don't think No Limit would want to, we'll be sitting around a table rubbing their hands together saying, oh, look, here we go, we're going to charge these guys $70 and they're going to pay it. I don't think that's the case. I think they would be sitting around thinking probably what we're actually saying, geez, how can we charge $70 for this event? But the numbers people are saying, well, sorry boys, based on our projections of this event, you have to charge $70 or you guys are going to be out of business. So yeah, it's fascinating times, and even to an extent with the free stuff as well. I know we're all, again, over the moon about the Premier Boxing Series and what Stan are doing as well, and who knows what DAZN with Tasman Fight as well. Not that they've been overly active, but I know for a fact those shows are extremely hard to put on as well by the promoters. I've no promoters involved, I've done it myself, but I had funding, or we had funding. These guys don't. And you've got the likes of 7 Plus and DAZN pushing these guys to, out of their own pocket, get the production to pay-per-view worthy type of levels, but without actually contributing to it themselves. So it's a really tough situation for those guys as well. So don't think that it's all just going to be as I say, sunshine and rainbows as far as those free events go as well, or either, because I just think down the track we might have the Premier Boxing Series promoters saying, look, this, we just can't afford to do this. It's very hard to make money off them, especially getting people there on a Wednesday night. I know it's more of a TV event, but they still need people at the events to to pay for the shows as well. So that's not just the pay-per-view part of it either. That's a real problem. The free part of it, or with Stan and DAZN, I think sometimes with Stan you've got to pay the pay-per-view, but with DAZN and 7 Plus you don't. Those promoters are going to start to feel the pinch as well. So it's exciting times, but also really intriguing and scary times that the promoters just aren't. Well, the TV networks for starters are going to not. A lot of the TV networks really like boxing, by the way. I think they just put them on because they just want to be seen to be all things to all people. But I know for a fact the boxing stations or the networks don't necessarily see boxing as a real viable option for them, especially here when you've got the football and soccer and cricket and God knows whatever else out there. So so you've got the TV networks who aren't going to be overly coming forward being overly ambitious or proactive as far as helping the promoters out there, and you're going to have the promoters saying we just can't afford to put these events on. So it's a really tough situation. So I'm intrigued to see how it goes. As I said, it's a really exciting time, but also, in my opinion, a little bit of a scary time, because the big promoters like No Limit aren't going to be able to bring big fights or put on big shows here in Australia. Main Event will probably say, well, you know what, if you can't afford to put them on, it's not really our problem. They'll just scrap it and replace it with something else. So we won't have those pay-per-views. We won't have enough money, or No Limit won't have enough money to put the Sam Goodmans and Liam Wilsons and these types of guys on the Wednesday night format, because they just won't be able to afford to bring the opponents in. And then, of course, as I said, if the fans don't want to pay the $70 at this stage, and it probably could be more at the time of inflation, whether they can afford to pay even more than that. So it's, interesting times. But I thought, rather than just do a quick bit on Instagram or whatever it might be, or even on Talking Boxing, I'd probably get on here and just explain a little bit more of my opinion and how it works, and the situation that we find Australian boxing in as far as the pay-per-view and normal TV versions of it go. So let me know what you think. First and foremost, are you going to pay the $70 for the Sam Goodman fight? I've got a feeling I'm going to know I know the response. But let us know in the comments your thoughts on it. I'm going to be really interested to see where we're at in a year or two's time, once the dust settles on the zones and 7 Pluses and the No Limit on Foxes and all this sort of stuff, because as I said, it's lots of catch-22s around at the moment. So again, let me know what you think, and let's see what happens going into the future.